That's what's left of the bearings.
Jeez.
So there's two roller tapered bearings that are destroyed.
Okay, so we got a 2010 Land Rover LR4 that we had sold to a friend of ours in the shop today. They were on their way. They're about 2,000 miles into a 3,000 to 4,000 mile trip. Everything was going good. They heard a vibration. They initially thought they might have blown a tire. They pulled off to the side of the highway, and come to find out, tire was fine, but it had slung grease all over the place. He sent me a picture of it, and it looked, I could tell in the picture right away that it was CV axle joint grease. So I wasn't sure if the axle actually exploded or what the deal was. He says they tried to move it just a couple feet and it would make all kinds of clanking and banging noises. When they had the tow truck winch it up, that wheel would bind up. This is the passenger side rear wheel. It would lock up and then break free. They ended up getting a trailer, bringing it to our house. I backed it off the trailer into the shop, and it definitely is making some clanking noises. Feels like it's binding up as well. So we are going to get this thing up on jack stands and see exactly what failed. Okay, so before I pull this wheel off, I'm just going to check to see if the wheel bearings are bad. And I'm definitely, see if I can do this one-handed. I can definitely feel movement both up and down and side to side. So that's telling me that the wheel bearings have failed. Don't know if that's the ultimate culprit to it, but definitely got some damaged wheel bearings here. You can see back behind the wheel here, all the grease. It's flung around, and it looks like that CV axle boot is ripped. Okay, I got the wheel off. Just kind of taking a look at everything. Check out all this grease inside this wheel. Just caked on in there. Definitely grease from a CV axle joint. Crazy. Looking at my brakes, I'm not seeing any damage to the brake rotor. Doesn't look like the brakes malfunctioned. Looking back behind here, I can see the CV axle boot. Looks like it was actually melted. So something got pretty hot. Where it melted and then gave out and started flinging grease everywhere. That's crazy. So we can see some weird melting around the ABS sensor. Now I'm just checking out the upper and lower control arms, the air strut. I don't see any damage on any of it. I'm looking for impact marks that they might have ran over something. And I'm not seeing anything, no signs of impact. All right, so went ahead and removed the brake caliper assembly. All of one unit. You just need a number 15 12-point socket, and that'll take that out. I removed the axle nut, which is right here. This is a number 32 socket. And I just had the wife hold the brake pedal down, and I broke it loose with a 1/2-inch drive breaker bar. So I got this off. We got this off. So I'm going to take, I don't think you have to, but I'm going to just so I don't damage it. Less things to worry about. This is a T50, Torx 50. That'll hold your rotor on. So then should be able to pull that off. So I'll get two hands, slide it off, and probably next we'll do the ABS sensor so we don't forget about it. I got the brake caliper zip tied up here so it doesn't get damaged. Then we'll do the tie rod and then your two ball joints. All right, give you an update. Pulled the ABS sensor out. Check that out. Not supposed to look like that, so it got hot and melted. So got that out of the way. You'll want to mark your alignment cam. Try to get it back to close alignment. It's a number 19 deep socket to break this loose. It is a number 24 to do the lower nut on the ball joint. And then this was a 18 to take the tie rod off. So I got these all broke loose. We'll go ahead and take them off. And then I'll probably, well, depending on what I find, I'll have to disconnect the parking brake mechanism, so that'll be interesting. But all right, there's that adjustment nut or retaining nut right there. So all right, let me get this off. All right, so I went ahead and took off the parking brake assembly. It's a pretty standard drum brake setup. I like the way they did the parking brake cable. This is plastic, so you put a number 19 is what size it is. It won't turn it. So I just used a pair of adjustable pliers and grabbed it right here. It's kind of roughed up to where the pliers grip nice. It wasn't super tight, and just took it out that way. The cable, once you take that out, it'll slide out of the spring, but this is the end of the cable, and that actually is, you can see the brake shoe. Basically, it feeds into this hole. Sorry, it's not focusing. There we go. And to get it out, you pivot this, you pull the cable forward, pivot that down, and then slide it through the side of it here, and it comes right out. So fairly straightforward. I know there's a lot of videos on these parking brakes. So yep, we got that out. So now the only thing I should have is the upper and lower ball joints to take those out. Now this thing does not turn, so I'm pretty confident that wheel bearing's ruined. We'll just see if the wheel bearing welded itself to the CV axle. So let me get the rest of this off. So I'm going to pull this out.
Is that rubber from the tire?
That is metal and grease. So whatever failed. And then the boot's torn. It has grease in it, so it's not like it ran it dry. I'm gonna guess we have a bearing failure, which heated up, melted your ABS sensor, and she's still tough to get out of there. Not sure what that's to. I'm gonna have to get a punch, finish knocking that through. Oh, there we go. Here's the bearing. You can see this is all the bearing, roller bearings that failed. So this does not move. So it looks like wheel bearing failed, which usually you'll hear them making noise and growling, but I'll have to ask them if they heard anything, hundreds of miles before this. 'Cause that's probably gonna be tough to get out too. And then when this seized up, probably put a lot of stress on this axle and the heat. Actually, I bet the axle didn't even hurt.
the joint because it feels pretty good. I'm thinking that the heat created from this, which melted these, melted our boot, which flung the grease out. No other damage, just based on this being melted. It got so hot it melted the ABS sensor. So this is like welding itself. It was probably red hot. Heated up, melted the boot. The boot got on to the hot metal, started smoking. That's why they saw smoke. And then it just kept flinging the grease out of the boot after it melted the boot. Probably got it pretty hot and torn. So I don't know if I feel comfortable reusing this axle. We could probably put a new boot on there. You can see damage to this part. And then let me get the brake rotor over here. You got metal shavings here. And you see this metal shavings in the brake rotor. But we'll pull it apart and then I'll talk to him and see what he wants to do. All right, I'll work at getting this tore apart. I do have a ball joint close. I don't know if that would work. I'll try this and then I'll pull it out. Safety glasses in place.
I know.
All right, got that out.
God, you're absolute
Oh, damn.
genius. He polished it, didn't he?
And he ground it. I know something's... So this is a circlip. We'll pull that out and then hopefully be able to drive the damaged bearing out. And then that's salvageable, maybe. But at least we can use the press. That's what's left of the bearings.
Jeez.
So there's two roller tapered bearings that are destroyed. And then that's one of your roller. That's what it's supposed to look like. It's hard to steel. That had to have been making noise. You know? Oh, there we go. Okay. So then you flip it over. Oh yeah. All right, cool. I just got to open up the center. See if this is gonna work. That's what we're trying to get out. So looks like we might be saved if I can get that piece out. What we'll do, see if I can get it with a hammer, finish it up. There's your bearing sleeve. That is crazy. So we gotta make sure, yeah, I could probably polish this up. I'll clean any burrs off because the CV end goes right in there. And then this, do the same thing. We'll clean off the burrs. I think it's salvageable. So now it's this. So okay, so we got some of the new parts in. We're still waiting on the CV axle half shaft, but we can get started here. Here's our replacement bearing. Went with Timken just because this particular bearing is made in Japan, and even says it on one of these sides. But that's where I was specific about getting that bearing. There's your part number for the bearing, Timken number, and then we got a new hub, and there's the brand and part number that I'm using for that. Then I went with a Bosch ABS sensor. Get the part number turned around right for you. There's your part number for the Bosch, and it's the whole new sensor, pigtail, so we'll fish it up there. So we're gonna get all this put together. First we'll press the new bearing. There's the old one, came out. But we'll press this bearing into our spindle, and after that's done, we'll press our hub into that bearing that's in the spindle. So that's kind of the plan. And then once that's done, we can put in our ABS sensor, plug it in, get it ready, and then we're just waiting for the axle shaft to show up. We can put this back together. But let me get stuff tidied up here and set up, and we'll get it pressed in. Okay, we got this set up in the press. We got the new bearing here. I'm using the old bearing race, so it only pushes on the outside. I did heat this up with my torch just slightly, just to warm it up. You can put this heat this up and then put that bearing in the freezer for a couple hours, and that'll might help it. I'm not too worried with the press. And then I just got it spaced up here, so I'm pressing it straight down, and we'll see how she goes.
All right, pull this back apart. All right, so I'm just making sure that it's down below the lip here because that snap ring is going to go in there. We can also lift it up and see how it looks on this side, and if it's seated all the way in. All right, so we got that pressed all the way in. We got our snap ring seated in there. We know it's locked in there because you can turn it. Locks right into that groove. So the next thing we're going to do is take our new rotor or new hub, and it'll get pressed in right like that. So I'm going to get this set up to press in. I just have a flat plate that goes across, so it shouldn't hurt anything, and we'll press it down in there, and then we'll be done and just waiting on the axle shaft. Okay, so when you get ready to press your hub into your bearing and spindle unit, you're going to want to get something to put on the inside here that will press against the bearing itself, and that's going to go down, and that was going to prevent the bearing from getting pushed through. So I'll show you how it's set up. Okay, I got this all pressed in. You can see how it's pressed down. You can see my tool that I left there that presses up against the bottom of the bearing. My press is here. It's pushing against my lug nuts, but they're even, nice and flat and straight. She presses right in and seats down inside there, and that bottoms out against the shoulder of the bearing. You should be good. So once you take it apart, you should have a nice smooth bearing. Can't really turn it with one hand, but should move just fine. So all right, this is ready to install. Once we get the axle shaft in, I'll go ahead and put the ABS sensor on, get it ready. So we're just waiting on that shaft. All right, so we're going to get ready to replace the damaged ABS sensor, and it's pretty straightforward. You'll see these little collars, clips, that it just slides right in. So just follow it back, and it'll go back around the back of the shock tower, and this one's right here. So we'll disconnect it here, and then we'll just install the new one in the reverse order. Okay, so that was super easy. Like I said, I just fetched it around. The new one comes with the new Christmas tree that allows it to clip into this harness clip here. Lock, squeeze your connector together to get it to lock in. Just make sure you're in all these little spots. Super easy. So now we're ready with our new sensor for when we were able to put our control pad. So we're all ready for when we put our spindle back on, and we can bolt that up to it. And I think I'll just go ahead and wipe this down real quick while we wait for that shaft, and then it's just a waiting game. All right, our new axle showed up. That's the new one. Came with a new axle nut. Looks pretty good. All one complete unit, ready to install. Again, there's our old one. And we probably could have replaced the boot, but I looked closely at that ABS tone ring, and it's pretty chewed up. So I think we'd probably have some issues. So I think we're good bet on replacing this. Now, Land Rover doesn't sell a replacement axle anymore. It's discontinued. So what I found was, show you this. This is the brand we got, and this particular one,
I chose it because it came with a lifetime warranty. So I don't see it listed on the box, but yeah, I ordered from rockauto.com, and their website said a lifetime warranty, and so that's what we went with. It was reasonably priced, so we'll see. But I'm going to get this axle stabbed in there so we can put our spindle back on and get this back together. I think everything will go fairly quick. The longest thing probably will be putting that parking brake assembly back together. But I got to clean the individual parts as I do it, and we'll see how it all goes. Let me get this axle stabbed in there. Okay, so you can see right in there, that's where we're going to stab our new axle. I went ahead and just coated it, the end of the shaft here, with grease. There's a little circlip that is what holds that shaft. Once you get it, you'll push it in and then have to give it a click in, a force push in, and then that you should feel it seat in there and it should be good. But I just greased it so we don't damage anything, and hopefully it slides right in. Okay, so it's in there. You just want to take your time. You'll feel it line up with the splines. Feed it back. It goes back in stages. No hammers needed. It slid back. Felt like it wasn't going to go anymore. And then I just worked it up and down a little bit, inside and in and out. And then she slipped again. And then you could feel that engagement of that circlip. And it's seated all the way back. And I can tug on it. And she's not coming out. So we are good. That's ready to, that is installed. So I'm going to pull this off. Probably put some grease on this so she seats in there nice on the new hub, and we'll put our spindle and hub assembly on. All right, that went together super easy. We just had grease on the splines, slid this over. I set the bottom bolt in. They're not tight, but I set the bottom bolt in first. The nut's on there. I'll show you that I still got to tighten it up. I'm not going to tighten any of these up until I get it down on the ground. I got this bolt in. So once I got the lower spindle bolt in, put the jack underneath it, and set my shock strut in, put that bolt in. It's not tight. And then I jacked it up to get it lined up here. Got this bolt in, then I did this tie rod end. And then that's snugged up with Loctite, because that one doesn't need anything. And then we're gonna torque this one and set it to my mark once it's on the ground. Same with the lower one and the strut. So those will be tightened up with the weight of the vehicle on it. I got this one on there. I don't have it torqued down. It's just use my hammer drill to get it on there. She's nice and tight. I'll probably put a torque wrench on there and torque it down to the spec. I got my parking brake cable ran and attached to the back of the spindle. Nice and easy. I got my ABS sensor installed. The last clip in. So that's ready to go. So now I'm going to build the parking brake assembly, and then we'll be able to put the rotor on and caliper, finish this up. Okay, so get you guys caught up. Got the drum brakes for the parking brakes all installed. The process I did was I connected this spring first, and you'll see it comes from the bottom. That's important because otherwise it'll keep popping out. So you set this piece back here in first. You connect this brake shoe to your brake cable, okay? And then with the spring attached to both, I took this spring. This one I had left seated right where it's at, and I took this one and set it at 90 degrees like this, and then used leverage to tighten it up, and it just slid right into place. And that's how I got the bottom together. Then I put this adjuster on the top, then the little spring. Then I did this clip and then this clip. And the only thing I used was a pair of needle nose pliers and a flat tip screwdriver. So no special tools needed. Just take your time, and I'd wear safety glasses because those springs can let go. So now I'm just gonna do one quick cleaning of the brake shoe to make sure there's no oily residue from my hands on it. Clean up the rotor, and then I'll I'll sit. So basically, I'll put the rotor on there, and then adjust this. This is your adjustments for your parking brake. You'll adjust this out till the brake just barely grabs your rotor. So inside the drum here on that surface. But let me get this cleaned up because there's a lot of metal from the destruction. And then we'll get the wheel on there and take it for a test drive. All right, so we got it all back together. Again, we lined up our paint marks. Still probably do alignment at some point. We replaced our ABS sensor right down there. We got our new axle shaft in. We torqued down our axle shaft nut to 230 Newton meters with the parking brake on, so that was good. The parking brake's holding and working, so that's a good sign. Got our brake pads, our brake caliper back on, put Loctite on those bolts. We put the jack underneath, put weight of the vehicle on the suspension, and tighten down our strut, lower strut bolt, our alignment cam bolt, and our lower ball joint bolt, and also this tie rod bolt. So everything's tightened down. We're gonna put the wheel on. Actually, one thing I didn't do yet is, you can see, I take a punch and I knock that down into this keyway, and that'll act as an anti-lock, so this won't back out. So I'm gonna do that real quick, and we'll get the wheel on and take this for a test drive. Well, we had a successful test drive. Everything drives perfect, no noises, no excessive heat. After a good long test drive, went around some corners, did some highway speeds. Everything feels really good. So this job is complete. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.